Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's been sleeping on Sampha. I've not reviewed his album Lanai, even though it came out a month ago, and I get quite a few comments. They go something like this: Sampha, when? Or is it Sampha? Sampha, when? However you pronounce his name, and when. And the real question is, when am I going to review this album? And certainly, it seems like I should. I mean, he released the last album in 2016 before I started this channel, so this gives me a chance to check in on a very important modern young artist, exactly the kind of artist that I missed while I was asleep to music between 2005 and 2018. And I love him whenever I've heard him. I mean, he made the song Father Time. I mean, okay, Kendrick's verses made Father Time, but the way that his weary, cool, oh, you wanna wake up, he's just great. He's like, he has the same impact when I hear him that like The Weeknd has, like that same, oh my God, this person can sing impact, but without that sense of danger or poison. And then even when you listen to this album, Lanai, it's very solid and very good, but yet when I listen to it, I didn't really attach to it. So I want to explain to you why. Why this album, which is objectively a great work of art. Okay? It's cohesive, it's well produced, it's meaningful, it's deep, it's gorgeous, it's melodic, it's rhythmically interesting. It's all of those things which I could give you if I was just, a music reviewer, just that. But what I want to do is sort of tell you about why it took me a while to review this album, why I wasn't even sure if I liked it, okay? So listen, this is my style, okay? If you just want like grades and numbers and stuff, I'm not for you, and that's cool. There's lots of other people who give grades and numbers and stuff. That's not me. What I'm really interested in is sort of the listening experience and sort of maybe trying to find interesting thing. Like, how does my personal experience as somebody who loves music, how does that maybe reflect something interesting about the music itself? So if you find that idea offensive, because who the hell am I? I'm just some guy who's sitting in his office talking about music, feel free to skip and go just listen to the album again. So what was it that prevented me from really sinking my teeth into this album on the first time? Now the second, third listen, it's great. It's a wonderful album. The number one reason is its perfection. So it has that kind of feeling, what I call the all things to all people feeling, which sometimes is good and sometimes is bad, I mean, if the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill came out, and I wasn't in my early 20s when it came out, I imagine I would have been a little bit hesitant, even though it's a masterpiece, because I would have been like, this is such a meaningful and perfectly created album, and every single song, sometimes there can be you can sense a hollowness in that kind of all things to all people perfection. But come on, Skye, that's bullshit. No, I would have been wrong if I said that about Lauryn Hill, so I'm clearly wrong saying that about Sampha. Sampha, I don't know how to pronounce it. You can tell me in the comments. I assume it's Sampha because that sounds more of a British way of pronouncing it. I think he's from South London. The other thing is, at times it feels like a musical. And I'll talk more about that. In general, I don't care for comedy musicals. I don't hate them. I like West Side Story, and Hamilton's fine, I guess. But in general, that kind of music tends to turn me off. But really the thing, and I had to check in with myself, I had to do what they call check your priors. What was it that kept me away from this album? 3 simple words. Jonathan Livingston Seagull. If this song feels like a musical, it feels like it's a musical about Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Now, what is this book? You'll notice I got it from the library, okay? If you hear the words Jonathan Livingston Seagull and you don't immediately think the following sentence, that's the combat seat, then count yourself lucky. Because Jonathan Livingston Seagull existed before Key and Peele in this book. And the fact that this album is so aligned that it references this book and feels like this book is what initially turned me off to it. So let me explain to you why. Maybe you haven't read this book. Millions upon millions of people have. Okay, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Okay, I mean, look, this is at the end of this, oh my God, it's just falling apart. It's falling apart because so many people have read it. Okay, I don't even. Okay, here's the cover, just what can I even do? Okay. If you don't know, it's got plenty of nice pictures in it, pictures of seagulls, and it's got this little story. Okay, so we'll just put Jonathan Livingston Seagull up there. Why don't we put it next to Robin over here? Okay. So we have Jonathan Livingston Seagull over there, and I'll sort of explain to you what the issue is. I was not alive when this book came out. I was born, 6 years after it was published. But I was still alive to feel its cultural import. There are certain things from the 1970s which really helped to shape the decade, and especially the way that the decade thought. Things like the bicentennial, pet rocks, Kiss for some reason, and this book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, okay? And the reason that it bothers me is that it sort of represents this transition from the 60s to the 70s, where the selfishness of the hedonistic 60s segued into the selfishness of the self-help 70s. In both cases, we have some major, what kids call today, main character syndrome happening. Okay, that's a lot of the issue with the boomer generation, which makes sense, right? They were the center of the world, right? There are so many of them, right? But Jonathan Livingston Seagull is this book where really it is about the mystical journey where you discover that you are the center of the universe and you alone have perception and the ability to see the divinity of existence. And if only the slop and rabble that surrounds you would just understand your brilliance, then you could be free. Okay? Do you hear the anger in my voice? That's the reason. Let me read. I'll get my glasses over here. These are the glasses I keep at work. I sat on them, and my dog Toby chewed them. So they're all messed up. So they're crooked. Who cares? I can still read with them. All right? This will give you an idea of what Jonathan Livingston Seagull is all about. But way off alone, out by himself, beyond the boat and shore, Jonathan Livingston Seagull was practicing. 100 feet in the sky, he lowered his webbed feet, lifted his beak, and strained to hold a painful, hard, twisting curve through his wings. The curve meant that he would fly slowly, and now he slowed down until his wind was a whisper in his face, until the ocean stood still beneath him. He narrowed his eyes, his face concentration, held his breath, forced out one single more inch of curve. Then his feathers ruffled, and he stalled and fell. Seagulls, as you know, never falter, never stall. To stall in the air is, for them, a disgrace and a dishonor. But Jonathan Livingston Seagull, unashamed, stretching his wings again in that trembling, hard curve, slowing and slowing, stalling once more, was no ordinary bird. Most gulls don't bother to learn more than the simplest facts of flight, how to get from shore to food and back again. For most gulls, I'm N-log, I'm not like other gulls. For most gulls, it was not flying that matters, but eating. For this gull, though, it was not eating that mattered, but flight. More than anything else, Jonathan Livingston Seagull loved to fly. Now listen, that's well written, okay? And it's a good story. It's a good story. It's a good story, but it really has this emphasis of how impressive and how important his individual greatness is in comparison to the rest of the uneducated idiots, okay? And in general, I don't go for those stories, okay? Later on in the book, Jonathan Seagull spent the rest of his days alone, but he flew way out beyond the far cliffs. His one sorrow was not solitude. It was that the other gulls refused to believe in the glory of flight that awaited them. They refused to open their eyes and see. What he had once hoped for the flock, he now gained for himself alone. He learned to fly and was not sorry for the price he had paid. So it's this kind of like weird, somewhat hero worship aspect of a kind of cult of individuality and the smug self-satisfaction that new agey people get in their own mastery, in their ability to see, to exist on a high frequency when everyone else is low frequency. You're high frequency, okay? God damn it. I forgot to put this up there. Damn, that sucks. I'm all out of my headspace now. I was talking about Jonathan Livingston Seagull and my issues with it. So, I mean, really, it's a It's partly a generational thing. It's growing up sort of with a lot of that thinking, the kind of solipsistic, self-obsessed thinking that comes from Jonathan Livingston Seagull, despite the fact it's a well-told story, despite the fact that it's interesting, despite the fact it has lots of great photography. I mean, it's a really interesting idea, having all these photographs in the story. It's a compelling narrative. It's weird. It kind of devolves into a semi-cult-like story, like where he becomes the leader of, like, the enlightened seagulls. and and stay tuned to the end of the video. I will show you a funny joke that someone wrote into this book, because as you can see, this book has been well loved. You're not going to go to a library and find a copy of this book that has not been taken out hundreds of times. This book is incomprehensibly popular. So this raises the question, if I feel like this is kind of a musical, and I feel like it's kind of a musical around the themes of Jonathan Livingston Seagull, can I like it? Well, first of all, let's give Sampha, let's give him the benefit of the doubt, because I actually ended up reading an article with him, and he said that I speak a lot about flying, and I mentioned Jonathan Livingston Seagull. For me, the question was sometimes thinking about limits, the search for perfection. I don't agree with everything in Jonathan Livingston Seagull as a book. It was more of a memory to me. His brother read it to him when he was a child. The feeling of that memory as opposed to the actual details of the book. In which case, now I'm on board. See, now I'm on board. See, now that I get it, that because you see, like I used to read to my kids books that aren't even particularly, like I read Stuart Little to my kids, like that book's fine. It's kind of weird actually. Same thing with Charlotte's Web. And I read those stories to my kids like when they were younger, and this kind of idea, like okay, that kind of makes sense that he had these ideas of perfection and freedom and learning how to fly in a world of people who just know how to eat. That's pretty interesting. But even if we don't have that caveat, let's challenge myself even further and say, well, so what? So what if it's basically a musical about Jonathan Livingston Seagull? So what? What would I prefer if it's like a weekend album and it's all about like pain and remorse and drug use and corrupting young girls and all that stuff? Or would I prefer it's, what? Like so what? It's an interesting album. It's a searching album. It's looking for some kind of spiritual answer. And even if I personally don't relate to a lot of the conclusions that are drawn here, or even if I feel like I'm further along in my own spiritual search, that doesn't mean I should just ignore this album. So, there you go. Now, this album totally came alive the second and third time I listened to it, because, that first time there was enough references to flying into Jonathan Livingston Seagull that I was like picturing, mood rings and, I had kind of a weird, funky 70s feeling stuck in my head. I was thinking about making a comparison, and, obviously I've already said The Weeknd many times. That's just because he's a very, very talented singer who often works with rappers. Okay, fine. There is an ethereal quality to his voice. I do think we could sort of see him as being sort of Weeknd meets James Blakey kind of thing as well, because just how strongly British his accent is, how much he likes to play with manipulating his voice, how much he likes to create this sort of interesting, engaging soundscape. But the album this reminds me most of is Solar Power by Lorde. Did you see that one coming? New sponsor, Slush Puppies. Better than Slurpees. Use my promo code. I use my promo code at checkout for... You get so many more paw points when you put Professor Skye in the promo code. The reason that reminds me of Lorde, first of all, the album cover is a bright blue sky with the singer, with an overhead shot of the singer. Now, it's not looking up at his cooch like it is in the Lorde album, Solar Power, but it has that similar kind of feeling where the album, much like Solar Power, is a search for spirituality, an attempt to understand. Now, unlike Lorde, I don't think he's trying to start a cult, but it has a sort of similar, like, young person on the verge of going from young adult to adult, figuring out their own spirituality in a world of excess, and it's cool, What do you think? Do you see that comparison? Right now I'm just so pissed that I have to edit the video together. The person who was knocking was just trying to see if they could get out of the language requirement. It's okay. It's okay. It's my job. So the stamp. The example song of the album is actually two. I want to take two songs from the middle of the album. I want to take the song that almost made me not review this album, Jonathan L. Seagull, okay? Because with great power comes great responsibility. Now, Jonathan L. Seagull is a great example of why this album is great and why it's confusing. And everything that I like about this album and everything that made me almost not review it. First of all, it starts off with what sounds like a restatement of Money Cash Hose, the Swizz Beatz beat off of Jay-Z. Boom, boom. But eventually a nice piano comes in and there's this flying choir heard off in the background. And then it starts off with a choir. And it sounds like, sounds like one of those musicals, where like everyone's standing up in front on the front of the stage. 26,000 hours, 242 minutes, 857 seconds. You know what I'm talking about? What was that one they sing on Les Miserables? It kind of has that feeling. And what they're singing is very much in keeping with what this album is about. Even though we've been through the same, doesn't always mean we feel the same. So he's putting himself as that sort of special seagull, what everyone else, but I like it. You are not me, and that's okay. So again, he's not actually just copying Jonathan Livingston Seagull. He's sort of developing it. He's in that world, but the whole thing, fortunately, the whole thing is not about how he has the secrets to the universe and everyone else is wrong. It's him understanding that he has this difference, but they're okay. And he asks the question, how high can a bird ever fly? And that does appear to be the question. And that's the central question of this book, perfection. There's a whole point in here. The more I talk about it, the more I actually kind of like this book. Secret Shame. There's a whole bit here where he thinks he dies and he sees this old mask. And yeah, I read this stupid book for this video review. Please smash the like bucket and subscribe and do AVAA, okay? That means awesome video as always. Please leave a comment. I read the stupid Jonathan Livingston Seagull book I've been avoiding my whole life just so I could do a better review here, okay? So anyways, he dies and he thinks he's in heaven. And this old, it gets super culty and weird and supernatural. Like he's in like a different plane of existence. And the old seagull says, what you think of heaven is perfection. Something like that. That essentially that heaven is actually perfection. So I don't know if I actually, I didn't get the page there, but that's what he says, right? So that's what the search is. It's a search for a kind of spiritual perfection, which is fine. It's, like it's not as offensive to me as an entire thing about how stupid the flock is, which is what I was fearing it would be. There's these little stabbing keyboards, which actually feel like flying to me. There's just, and then when he starts singing on his own, just forget it. Just, hey, Skye, shut up. Do you hear him singing? I sort of wish I didn't speak English because I could just listen to this guy's voice and just be wrapped up in his voice and not be worried about Richard Bach's 1970 best-selling book. They didn't even advertise this thing. This book just became big because people read it and they went kooky for it. It was like a viral book. Why am I becoming so interested in this book all of a sudden? Mine. And so his melody is so beautiful. He manages. This is the thing. I'm trying to think who does it better to have a voice that is impossibly precise and beautiful and well-trained that also sounds so tired and weary and worn. He's able to do both those things at the same time. That creates this effect, this feeling. You just want to just be wrapped up in his voice. It's so good. Weird little phasery pew-pew sounds at times, and then the bridge has really high-quality fretless bass played. In general, I don't like any song with a fretless bass, but that's just a personal thing. His voice gets kind of weird, and there's strings in the background, I think, and then eventually drums come in. A lot of this album is drumless, or at least mostly drumless for most of the song, but drums come in here, they're doubled, they're flying drums, okay? I think flying is a theme of this album. I think you're supposed to feel like flying. A lot of the themes are about flying and wings and feathers and birds and seagulls and all that. And I think it's supposed to feel that way. I think actually, I'm not going to lie, it was enjoyable to listen to this album and read this book, okay? PDFs are available online for free as well. This dude doesn't need any more money. Shh, you can find it for free. Jonathan Livingston Seagull, PDF, whole book's there. It takes an hour to read. And then a female sings this bridge, a female voice. Maybe that's the other person on the cover. And it's really beautiful because at the end, what started off as a very sort of electronic thing becomes very acoustic. This whole mysterious line, I puzzle into your embrace, it's very acoustic and not very electronic. And then leads into the next song. And I want to put these songs together as my as my stamp, because I really think this really encapsulates the album. These two songs right in the middle here. Inclination Compass, parentheses, Tenderness. This whistling and detuned piano, like these high piano notes are kind of blaring. No drums here, just voice and words in the beginning. And then these are my favorite lyrics on the album. And we're in need of some tenderness, like sun rays through a flying crowd. Did we have to be so featherless? That's nice. So now I'm thinking, now I'm in Jonathan Livingston mode, right? And I'm picturing him, picturing himself, thinking, did we have to be so featherless? Like, did we have to be so earthly, so devoid of this kind of spiritual journey? And his voice is so strong and so gorgeous, and he's using it just to get out these words, and eventually this super cool drum set comes in, and it's a very tight kind of jazzy drum set that just sounds like a very real drum set, not like a drum machine. And just put together, the spiritual bent of this album is clear, the sonic bent of this album is clear, and it's great. I'm going to go through the rest of the album a little bit quicker here. Opens up with Stereo Cooler Cloud. Is that really the name of the song? Shaman's Dream? Is it really called Stereo Cooler Cloud? Very British sounding beat. At times it gets to be jungle. It is something that I like, where his voice is very kind of slow and cool, and then often the drums are, the music is agitating as hell, because, jungle drums are just agitating, You can't just relax to jungle drums. Stupid amen break at like 9,000 BPMs. Very sort of like, again, James Blakey with the vocal manipulation, but maybe James Blake is like more like him. I don't know what the direction of influence is here. And his voice just does so much work, and there's this female voice on this song as well, and there'll be one later. It kind of goes throughout the entire album. Next track is Spirit 2.0. This is basically the thesis of the album, I think, about him reaching this high, not even a higher plane of consciousness, but starting or continuing on a more precise journey towards some kind of spirituality. The drum machine going too fast. There's like a little unexpected moment here with like these little strings. This is the first time he mentions, just like Jonathan Livingston Seagull, try to catch the clouds, I free fall, I was caught by the wings of my people. So I like this because it's implying the importance of Jonathan Livingston Seagull in his community. Because he does try. He does try to go back and teach the other rabble, right? He doesn't forsake the other seagulls. So, maybe I'm being too harsh on it. He does try to help them, but they don't quite see what it is. It also gets weird and religious-y. He's like sort of like a god seagull and sort of like a devil seagull at the same time. And he doesn't want to be called a devil seagull or a god seagull, but Dancing Circles has this great anxious feeling to it. That's the other thing about this album, is it can calm you down and it can freak you out. This piano, it sounds like a time bomb's going on. Now his voice is very, very soothing, but he's talking about being in traffic in London. I've been to London, but never been to traffic in London. I was somewhere, I think, near Muswell Hill. Or is that just the Kinks album? I don't know. He has these sort of like rap-like ad-libs while he's singing. We're in this great time now where so many people are just rappers and not, he's not a rap artist at all, but like he can sort of rap, and sometimes he raps, and sometimes you might call him a rap artist, sometimes you might call him a singer. This has another great lyric. Dancing, come close, hold me so much, we both let go. Hold me so close, we both let go. Or hold me so much. The point is this. I think he says both. It's a beautiful image that someone can hold you so much they can let go. Because if someone's holding on to you and they can't let go, then they're grasping onto you. They're afraid to lose you. That's like attachment. That's not like a deep kind of love. But he's saying, hold me so much, we both let go. That's a beautifully written love line. Seriously. That is one of the better love lines I've read this year. I love his phrasing, too, on this kind of like semi-rap bits here. Again, sort of in the Lord area, he's talking about all these nice places he goes, like Mexico and Hawaii. And it's not called Lanai because Lanai is one of the islands in Hawaii. It's because it was one of his grandparents' name. So I thought the whole thing was like recorded in Hawaii. I really got into a Lord headspace when I heard this. We're two birds flying away from each other, looking to recover. The themes of birds keeps coming back. Suspended. This is the most pop song about being saved by love. This is the other musical element, which there's no way I can get around. A cappella. A cappella music. is not the worst. Okay, it's not impossible for a cappella to be good, but it is the worst kind of music. Okay? That's what I'll go with. Okay? It is the worst kind of music that can be good. I just, I went to a small liberal arts college. There were like 3 a cappella groups, and one of my friends was in one of them, so I had to go to all the concerts, and I would just see them just singing and smiling and snapping. Really, I mean, his voice is so beautiful, it's fine. But I don't find it enjoyable to listen to, and it feels too a cappella to me. But it's so catchy that's in my head. I've been lifted by her love. It's, again, sort of a reverse Weekend style song because its singing is so beautiful and it makes you feel, at least it makes me feel that same kind of way that I feel listening to Weekend's music. But it's not dark and negative. It's very beautiful. And when the drums come in, it's super powerful. In another life, we were 2 birds that soared. This is why I want to go back to that quote. It's not really about Jonathan Livingston Seagull. It sort of is, but it makes sense now that he says it. It really makes sense that this is his hazy recollection of what it was like and just using the themes of flying and birds. He talks about going to Florence. He's all over the place. And then like a cool, grimy, low sub-bass, just very well produced. Next track is called Satellite Business, self-produced. He does a lot of production himself, which is very impressive as well. Leads directly, the whole album has this great flow, leads directly from the previous song, kind of double voice rapping. He references Inner Vision, which I think is on purpose. I think he's trying to make you think of Stevie Wonder. I think he's trying to make you think, is he the next Stevie Wonder? And he's not the next Stevie Wonder, because Stevie Wonder has not yet been replaced in terms of what he's able to do, but not that far. Like, he might be this era of Stevie Wonder. I don't think he's on par with Stevie Wonder, but maybe, and when he references Inner Visions, Never Named Visions, it's a great album. Even that, Higher Ground, the biggest hit off that, it's a song about reincarnation, has a very kind of early 70s vibe. Jonathan Livingston Seagull, I would imagine that if you listen to Stevie Wonder and then you listen to this, they would go very well with each other. Again, more great lyrics. Looking in the mirror, I can see a limit. I can see a body. I can feel a difference. This is the great mind-body dichotomy that he's discussing here, which I guess is hinted at a little bit in the book. I'm going to put the cover back on here so that every time I pull up the book, it has more visual impact. It's not like the book. It's like the book in the way that he's talking a lot about physical, like how to transcend physical limitations to reach some kind of spiritual high. Then we get to the stamps in the middle of the album, Jonathan Seagull, Inclination Compass. And then we get to Only, kind of an attacking sound, nice stutter beat. Again, he's in Seagull mode, la la la, it's fingers in my ear, I'm not trying to hear, I'm moving on faith and faith alone, desires crush me numb, I wish I'd chase them some, from love I would run, like it's just here to disown me. This real sense of searching for faith and searching for meaning. Timepiece is a song all in French. So hey, le temps n'existe pas. In England, you have to take a couple years of another language. Maybe he took some French. Time does not exist. Machine à remonter le temps. A machine to go back in time. This is where we go back to this interesting other theme of the album, in addition to sort of the ability to fly away and be a little seagull. The concept of can you go back and what's the value of going forward and what's the importance of going slow. That's another part of this book. It really emphasizes the importance of slowness, which I'm talking myself into liking this book. That's a really good point to have, right? And the way that he sings, I was listening to this with my family, and my daughter was like, this is the most British voice I've ever heard. Can't go back. Can't go back. Anyways, hey, they invented English, okay? So I have an accent, not them. All about time flying. Reminds me of my favorite Marx Brothers joke. It's actually my favorite joke of all time, probably. Time flies like an arrow. Fruit flies like bananas. Even a little bit in the back, it reminds me of the overworld theme, the piano from Zelda, the new Zelda video games. Now that you've heard it, you can't unhear it. And again, talking about like looking in the mirror, and then he references his daughter, so the sense of something growing bigger, another little jungle bit in the middle. And there's this great thing. You can't go back, you can move forward slower. And this is a really beautiful idea, and here's another thing about spirituality and like self-help deals. If you're going to do it well. So it, like this, as a lesson, as a moral, you can't go back in time, but you can move forward slower, is enough to really improve your life. Like if you really take that lesson to heart and really think about it, it's such a gorgeous concept. That's the only way to defeat time, is to go slow. Evidence, again, kind of sort of a cappella-y here, kind of musical style here, piano and horns. The bongos, a little too much for me. I like it when it becomes a little fast waltz at the end. And there's this great little bit, I think it's intentional, it's kind of a joke, where he says, I can get stuck in perfection, and then it actually sounds a little bit like hiccup in the production. But the production here is so good all the way throughout. I do think it's interesting because like the search for perfection, that shouldn't be a spiritual thing, you know? Spirituality should not necessarily be a search for perfection. So he's saying getting stuck in perfection, you know, maybe there's more value in not. Wave therapy is just a electronic song, just strings. At the end, it gets stuck into a beat. Next song is What If You Hypnotize Me? And this is cool because it has this like musical feel again, but he's really expanding into analyzing himself, and he's thinking about hypnotism, going back to 70s and the self-help movement. There's a lot of belief in hypnotism back there, but it's this sort of feeling that we sometimes have where we sort of wish we were stupid enough to be cured by the things that cure other people, you know? Like, I wish I was stupid enough to believe in things that other people believe and give them comfort. Doesn't that make sense? So maybe if you could hypnotize me, then peace would find me, you know? So he's trying to find this peace, but maybe he's intelligenced himself out of finding that peace. And this beautiful lyric, if you could make the what ifs just fly away for a minute. Again, talking about regret, talking about time, it's very cohesive. Now that I really think about it, it really is about regret. You can't do anything about regret. You can't do anything about the past. You can't do anything about the past. You can just go forward. You can just go forward slowly, and then maybe attain some kind of perfection, some kind of human, some kind of extra human spiritual bliss in some kind of slow perfection. The album ends with a rose tint, little tinkling sounds, boops and beeps, and more of this great British accent. Really the most avant-garde production on here is like these weird whizzy beat sounds and like jazzy pianos. And it seems like it's just about his family. It's just about how important it is to be connected to his family. And in that way, I appreciate it because it goes away from some of the things that bugs me about the book. You know, that the flock is not the problem. The flock is not stopping you from flying. And I like it because it just sort of, it comes together and it falls apart and it keeps, and it really does a great job. It does a great job of mixing, of like closing out this album and having this sort of sense of falling apart and coming back together. So I promised you I would show you a funny thing in this book. So this is like the most 70s book write-up. Okay, so someone was reading this and they got so inspired that they wrote in the book right there. Okay, so I'm going to read the book and then I'm going to read their commentary. No, Jonathan, there's no such place. Heaven is not a place, and it is not a time. Heaven is being perfect. He went silent for a moment. You are a very fast flyer, aren't you? I enjoy speed and pot and beer, Jonathan said. So they wrote in there, I enjoy speed and pot and beer. So this must date back to the 70s because people don't call it pot anymore. I don't do this stuff. But no one calls it pot anymore. So someone just thought they were super funny. And whoever you are, person who got this book out of the library, whichever one of these people who got into the world of Jonathan Livingston Seagull, I appreciate your humor. And I've now memorialized it for literally hundreds of people. I actually brought my Patreon list into school today because I've been doing so many of my videos in my office. because it's just super crazy at the house with the baby. So these are my Patreons. They give me money, and then I use that money to buy music. I don't know if I'm going to buy this album. Probably not. I like it, but those elements that made it hard for me to really sort of take a bite into it are probably going to prevent me from wanting to listen to it all the time. But I don't know, because the voice is so beautiful, and it might end up sort of haunting me, and I might end up wanting to get it in the end. So, thank you to them. Now I have to edit this thing together because that person had to knock. All right, till next time, there's the camera.